What's up, world-renowned family? Neal Oates Jr. here, and I'm excited because it's that time again where we get some time from one of my favorite human beings, Mr. Robin Lewis from Robin Lewis Insurance Organization. Robin, thank you for your time, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. It's funny you started that way, but right back at you. You are definitely one of my favorite people, sir. I appreciate you, man.
Oh, and you are appreciated. So we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
That's not only for those in the industry, but also for homeowners, for buyers, right? And I think
yeah.
that this is a perfect time for us to talk about it as we get ready to close out 2022 and start something new. Are you ready, sir?
Yes, definitely, sir.
All right. So, first of all, for those of you who do not know, Robin Lewis is the owner of Robin Lewis Insurance Organization, the go-to person for all of your insurance needs. Now, I don't say that because he handles all of my personal stuff, although he does. Here's why I say that, because he is just a wealth of knowledge, wealth of information. And if you have any questions, go to him because he wants to help everyone make informed, educated decisions. And that's why we have Robin here with us today. So let's jump right into it. Just first, talking about the real estate industry, Robin, we know that there's some uncertainty just in the real estate industry as a whole, right? And so oftentimes, whether we're buyers or sellers or real estate professionals, we only think about the sale transaction, getting the property under contract. But as I know, as you know, that's only part of it, getting it signed, because then we have to have this thing for finance or for peace of mind. We have to have this thing called insurance. Right. And we've talked
Yes.
a number of times about the importance of and why we have to have it and why lenders want to have it. But just on that part right now, what are you seeing as a whole in the industry, in the insurance industry right now? And how is that playing a part in the real estate side of things for buyers, sellers, and professionals?
Yeah, no, great way to start. Great question. First of all, Hurricane Ian that we had here recently that hit the west coast of Florida and just caused such significant damage. People are still displaced today, months later. And so that's the reason to have the insurance, right? That's one of the reasons. So the insurance is really about if there is an accident or a catastrophe or something like that causing property damage or bodily injury, that the insurance can provide the resources and the wherewithal to be able to repair or rebuild, or to also provide for your defense if you get sued. And I think that part of it does get missed sometimes in the real estate transaction, because oftentimes people just want to get insurance so that they can close. But the
Mhm.
reality is that you're getting the insurance so you can close, but also so that if something happens down the road, you have the resources.
Now, Robin, on that part, right? And so let's just pause right there because that's a big part, because I'm a real estate professional. And so is it safe to say that not all, but it is possible for me to really not serve my clients best if we're only looking at the getting whatever's needed just for the day of closing to satisfy and not looking at the long-term need of my client or customer?
It's unfortunate, Neil, but I see that happen so often, and sometimes it's minor things, because one of the drivers there obviously is price, right?
Mhm.
And I'm talking about the market conditions. We're gonna get to talk about that in a minute here, but obviously, price has gone up significantly in the last 2 years. My personal homeowners policy more than doubled, and so that's a big factor. But coming back to where, yes, it sometimes it's not in the best interest of the client, is I see things done to policies because you got to get it down. It's got to be it got it.
Got to
and
get
and
it
I
done,
see and
Robin.
I see things done to policies to strip it down
Mm.
to where that client would be very upset, and could be left having to cover a lot of stuff themselves because of coverages that are not in place or that type of a thing,
Now,
limitations, restrictions. Yeah.
Now, I know we have an agenda what we want to get to, but every time you open your mouth, something valuable is coming out. And so you mentioned your home insurance going up, doubling. We're hearing all this stuff about, and because we're still in the industry, this whole idea, we're hearing all about insurance premiums going up. You talked about Hurricane Ian. And I think we forget about things like that. But why are insurance rates, why did they go up so significantly in the past 2 years?
Yeah, the main reason is an abuse on litigation. Florida, and I think I have discussed these numbers before, but just a quick recap. Florida only has 8% of the claims, of property insurance claims in our nation, right? 8%. But yet Florida has close to 80% of the files in litigation in our nation. There's something that's upside down there. From 2013 to 2020, the insurance companies in Florida paid out $15 billion in property insurance claims. 72% of that went to attorneys. Mm-hmm. Only 8% went to the consumer. Only
Wow.
8% of that. The worst scenario I have heard, a friend of mine is an independent adjuster, and he shared with me he had a case where it took a few years for the case to be settled. They ended up paying $30,000 for the property insurance for the claim for the property, mm-hmm. and $600,000, and I didn't say that incorrectly, Neal, $600,000 for attorney's fees.
Wait. So how much for the claim did you say?
30,000.
30. And the attorney's fees were what? I'm sorry?
600,000. And so what is happening is that they're taking advantage. And so there are networks that have been set up, and you have people coming knocking on your door and telling you can get the insurance, get a new roof, and the insurance company, let the insurance company pay for it. You've been paying for them all these years. Let them pay up right now. And what they're doing is that they're using either assignment of benefits, where you sign something assigning the benefits over to them, and then they take that and they go and file lawsuits and take advantage of a situation. And one of the things that you and I are going to be talking about is that we actually just had a bill passed that is going to bring some good news and hopefully bring some reform to the property insurance situation. So there is good news on the horizon. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we have in Florida is we have what is called a one-way attorney fee. And so that's where these attorneys can just throw files up there, win or lose. There's nothing on their skin. If they lose, they don't have to pay any attorney's fees. They don't have to pay up anything, right? If they lose, they just go to the next case. And so that's one of the things that they're using to actually throw files up there. So you have some firms that are filing thousands of claims.
Wow.
And it's just taking advantage of the situation. And that's really caused havoc in the industry. And so, in the last year, we've had 7 companies actually go out of business.
7 insurance companies.
7 insurance companies. What happened to me personally?
Now, when that happens, so go ahead and say what happened to you personally, but then explain what happens to the industry, to professionals, to buyers and sellers when insurance companies go out of business, because we want to understand where we are now. We had 7 go out of business. What impact does it have on me trying to either sell property or me trying to get insurance for a property?
Yeah. So what happened with me personally, I had one of those companies on my own home, right? Avatar Insurance. I had Avatar Insurance for my homeowners insurance, and they're one of the companies that went out of business. And so I had to rewrite a new policy. And typically they give you less than 30 days in order to, less than 30 days notice of this happening, because they actually literally go into receivership. The state comes in and kind of takes over, and then you have 30 days, in which to less than 30 days in which to get a new. I couldn't get anything better than 2 times what I was paying before. And so what happens is that because it's hard to be profitable in this market, the insurance companies they would rather not write it than write it unprofitable, if that's a word, but the point is that what happens is that there are very few carriers that are writing now. Citizens has become the #1 carrier in Florida. Over 1.1 million policies are in Citizens now. And Citizens was set up to be the company of last resort, but they have become the company of only resort in many cases. And so it's hard to get insurance, right? #1, premiums are going up significantly. That's the other problem that we'll face in the real estate market. And for a closing, it can affect somebody whether they can qualify or not. So right now, for example, I had a situation the other day where the client just couldn't. #1, insurance, mortgage rates have gone up, and now the insurance is sky high.
So pause right there, Robin, because all we hear about mortgage rates, and we'll get the fees from the lender as far as the rates. We'll get the principal, the mortgage, the insurance, well, not even insurance, but in taxes. And then we say, well, we hear before closing, we have to have the insurance binder, right? And that's where we were looking at the mortgage rates as one, but now you're telling me these insurance rates, that can also be a barrier to home ownership or to purchasing property, correct?
Correct. I have seen it more times than, it happens a lot right now because the rates have gone up. People are paying $5, $6, $7, $8, $10, $12,000 a year for homeowners insurance premiums now.
And so in your experience, what's happening? So with your previous experience, just recently, we have someone trying to close. They got approved for the loan. They're getting ready to close, getting everything in order. Then it's time for insurance to bind. And what are they saying? Well, we don't have it. Or is that when they're going through and stripping away some things on the insurance? What are you seeing that we as professionals and as buyers and sellers, we can be aware of so we know what to look for in those situations? Robin, I'm sorry about that. Had a couple of little technical glitches, but would you just repeat one more time and tell us how is this insurance cost, lack of insurance, providers going out, how is that affecting real estate transactions for buyers, sellers, and agents?
Yeah, thank you. And technology, right? Go figure, man. Sometimes that happens. But listen, in a major way, it's affecting real estate closings. So one clear way, like in my career, I don't think I've ever had this like we have it now, where there are times where sometimes we can't even get insurance for the property. I tell you one thing that is a major, I don't know how much you and I have talked about it, but polybutylene piping, for example. If a home has polybutylene piping, we have very few companies that will even write a policy for that home. And depending upon how old it is, that shrinks. So if the home is older than 20 years old, Citizens won't write it. And so a lot of the other carriers won't write it. And the few that do, they either charge a lot or they have restrictions, and there might be other things on that property that might cause it to not qualify. So sometimes we can't even get insurance for the homes. The other thing is the roof. If the roof is a certain age, or if the roof is in a certain condition, like the roof is a major thing, because that's one of the areas that you have a lot of contractor scheming going on. People come knocking on the doors, or it's one of the areas where, for example, when we had Hurricane Irma, you had 3 years in which to file a claim, and you had people coming and soliciting homeowners and telling them, listen, we can get you a new home based upon Hurricane Irma. And so, Hurricane Irma was 2017. So 2020 or 2021, I think, is when this happened, September, where, I don't remember the number, but tens of thousands of claims were filed 3 years later for Hurricane Irma, and they were all based on the roof. So the roof is an area that they target, and this is why now carriers have put limitations on the age and condition of the roofs. And so that's a major factor with closings now. So if you have something where they're missing tiles, missing shingles, or a leak, or unsatisfactory roofs, that poses a big challenge in terms of trying to get insurance.
Understood.
So that's one factor. The other part of it, Neal, is the cost. So the cost of insurance now is so much higher that, if somebody might not qualify, it might throw them out of the possibility of qualifying for the loan, because, the debt to income and the escrow and the payment comes up way higher than what, quote unquote, they're supposed to be able to afford.
Understood.
Right? So that's a major factor. And I know you and I had spoke about the fact that what we see a lot of times happening, and this is where, as a real estate professional, be aware that you don't want to just get the lowest price policy out there, because oftentimes that means not getting proper coverage for the if and when, right? So that's what insurance is for. If something happens, you have an accident, a catastrophe, something happens, and you have damage to property, or you have an accident, or somebody sues you, you want to be able to have the wherewithal to be able to restore, rebuild, and provide for your defense. And so that's another factor that to be careful of. Be aware that oftentimes what it means when you get a lower premium is stripping down that policy, and just be aware of it, because sometimes there's some things that they do that just doesn't really make sense.
Got it.
Obviously,
so
you got to do what you can do to try and help somebody to afford and buy their home, right? So obviously, there's somebody who's in that situation. They don't mind losing some of the coverages so that they can qualify, but it's just a matter of being careful of that.
Right. But because if you have a good relationship with a good agent, maybe after closing, we can get some things. Maybe when the finances are right, you could come back and adjust the coverage, right?
Correct.
And maybe get what's needed. Okay, so Robin, right now, people are probably looking at you, listening to you, saying, this guy is a Sally Sourpuss. He is just bringing all of the bad news, the challenges, why the insurance is so high. They're blaming Robin Lewis. Don't blame Robin, people. But I think you really came here to share some good news with us about this silver lining, right? Some things that are on the horizon that maybe we can get excited about. And I know insurance is a hard thing to get excited about, right? But there are some where we see some easing up, maybe some things being put in place, even as recently as a couple of weeks or a week or so ago, correct?
Yes, sir. It's some major, what has been referred to as the most significant insurance reform to take place in Florida in decades. And so, yes, our governor called together a special session, and in also record time, they came through with a bill that has now been signed into law. And so there's some significant reform coming. And if you'd allow me to just pause for a moment, Neal, I want to tell your listeners to reach out to Neal if you have questions. I know we've talked a little bit about the market. There's a whole lot more that's going on with the market. Essentially, just know this, that the carriers are having a hard time to remain profitable. And there is a lot of other things that we can discuss. And I just want to encourage you. One thing I appreciate about Neal Oates is that he takes the time to get information. And so he's very educated. So if you're a realtor or a consumer, a homeowner, and you want to get more information on this type of thing, please feel free to reach out to him. So Neal, yes, coming back to the good news. And so, one of the major things that we talked about is the litigation, right? You remember us talking about the fact that Florida has 80%, close to 80% of the files in litigation in our nation. And, the vast majority of property insurance claims in the last 15 years, has been paid out to attorneys and not the homeowners. And so that needed to be addressed. And one of the things they've done is they've gotten rid of what we call the one-way attorney's fees. It
That's
used to be,
the 600,000 versus the 30,000. That's that 600,000 piece on the one that your friend saw,
yes,
right?
sir. That's an
Okay.
example of what happens as a result of that. That's exactly right. And so now the attorneys have to have skin in the game. So, for example, before this law, and by the way, it will take a while. So there is good things coming on the horizon, but it's going to take a little while because now this will be written into new policies that are written. So if somebody already has an existing policy, they're still under the old law, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you can appreciate, as policies renew now, this new thing will come into play. So if somebody has a claim from prior to this, that's still under the old regime. So it's going to take a little while for us to actually see the benefits of this. But what's going to happen is that the attorneys now have skin in the game. So, for example, if they sue an insurance company and the insurance company prevails, the attorneys, might have to pay the fees for the insurance company.
Okay.
It used to be before there's no question about that, and and they would still get paid their attorney's fees and so on, right?
Understood.
So the idea of the one-way attorney fees, it eliminates the one-way attorney's fees. It was a one-way where it was on the insurance carrier, it wasn't on the other side.
Okay.
And so that's been eliminated, and they've done some things.
So really quickly on that, Robin, are we anticipating when we see that? Are we expecting less filings, right, by companies because now they might have to pay instead of just throwing thousands of claims or filings? Are we expecting them to say, hold on, let's see if we really have a chance? Is that one of the benefits that we're anticipating happening?
100% right. Right on. Right now, you have some firms, Neal, that are just filing thousands of claims, and it's almost as if let's just throw them up there and see what we can collect on. That's kind of so now, because there's nothing to lose. So now they have to think twice about doing that.
Got it.
You follow?
Understood.
So yes, so the idea is yes. The other thing they have done, you and I don't think we spoke about it today, but you and I in the past have talked about assignment of benefits. Assignment of benefits is another thing that they use where, like somebody, and a lot of times this is where the homeowner is not even aware that they're signing this. So you have a water damage, you have a roof leak, you have something like that, and a contractor comes out to help you to get restored, right? Dry your place up, put on a tarp on your roof, whatever the case might be. Okay, Mr. Smith, we'll get this taken care of for you. Just sign right here, and so we can start the work. And not realizing that they're signing what they call an assignment of benefits. And what that does is it assign the rights of your policy over to this third party. And then that's what they're taking and filing lawsuits on your behalf, whether you want to do that or not, you can't even stop them because you've signed over the rights. And that's another way that they've been abusing this scenario. Now you can assignment of benefits. Now it eliminates the policyholder's ability to execute an assignment of benefits on property insurance policies. So that's now also going to be a thing of the past. Okay. I say going to be because it's going to be, be added to the policies as they go forward.
Now, really quickly on that, when you say policy going forward, policies that are starting to be written, when is it right now? Is it 2024, 23? Do we have an idea?
So yes, it's for that, because there are other parts of the bill that will there's a phasing in type of thing. For that policy is for new policies written in January 2023. Okay. And for policies that come up for renewal, the companies will then initiate these new the new wording into the policies. Yeah. Okay. Got it. So if a policy renewed in December, for example, that policy really won't actually happen until December of 2023. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Yeah, so that's why it's going to take a little while for the carriers to truly see the benefit of this. And somebody told me that they already heard that there's going to be attorneys filing to appeal.
Yeah.
And so who knows? It's unfortunate in our society. I don't mean to talk. And by the way, I have to say this because I feel like I'm already coming across as a attorney basher. Like any career, Neal, in your profession, in my profession, you have the good and you have the bad, right?
Yep.
And attorneys are not all bad. And
Right.
please, for our listeners today, I want to bring clarity to that. I have very good attorney friends. I use attorneys, for in my life and in my what I do in business. And so I don't have anything against attorneys, but unfortunately, yeah, there are some that are, they're going to try and find ways around this.
Mm-hmm.
On Florida in particular is, for some reason, Neal, we are known as the fraud state, and especially South Florida.
Yes, sir.
Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. And so who knows, this in the years past, we've dealt with PIP fraud. We've dealt with the oh my goodness, it's slipping me now. It's not ground collapse, it is sinkhole. We dealt with the sinkhole, and you had these billboard ads, 1-800, if you have a crack in your wall, call 800 attorney. And they found little ways to do that. Then it was the water damage, and they found little ways to take advantage of that. And unfortunately, we live in a litigious, a very crazy world, I call it.
Yep.
Where, that's what we're about, just looking for an opportunity to find a way to take advantage of a situation. And so who knows what's going to happen, in other words, as we move forward. But the way that it stands right now, our legislators have finally made some major decisions for reform. Some say it's way too late. Some say it should have been done way before this. And I would tend to agree, because it's gotten bad. As you said, it affects your client. It affects my client. I have a policy holder that's a senior citizen that's insuring a home for $250,000. It's costing them $12,000 a year.
Wow.
The lady was almost in tears. How am I going to pay $12,000 a year and I'm living on Social Security?
Yeah. And so on that real quick, see, those are the things that we just don't think about, right? We think, let's get them in the home. We're only thinking about down payment. Many of us aren't even thinking about the mortgage and then that insurance. We forget that while we don't have to pay the down payment every year, that insurance premium, we're going to have to cover that. It's got to be paid, right? Yeah. And I think that because it's after in our initial interaction, we don't think about the homeowner year 3, year 5. And this is where I want to remind people that it's not just about the insurance premium. It's about the agent that they choose. Because that guidance, when we have questions about, so personally, I had some things come up, right? And I started asking questions and I'm like, hold on, something isn't right. I got a letter from my lender. First thing I did, I picked up the phone. I called Robin. I'm like, hey, here's what they're saying. I've got 2 letters that are contradicting. Then I got a third one. So that's why having someone in your corner is going to be so valuable, especially when, I consider insurance just like taxes, right? There's always something new changing. There are carriers going out, carriers coming in, changes being made. We talk about citizens, and I don't have the time. I don't know where to begin, but I know that if we have the right people in our corner, we're going to get the right information. So, Robin, you were talking about that it's going to be in phases. And so we already talked about the cancellation or the removal of the one-way attorney fees, right? The assignment of benefits. Is there anything else that we should be anticipating or looking forward to, or at least just have our ears open? Or maybe we should just have a conversation with our insurance carrier about? Is there something that you would suggest as things are changing for that we keep top of mind?
Yeah, there are quite a few things on the bill to touch on and to just be aware of. One of them is and it's under it's written under, so the heading of the one-way attorney's fees. There's other things under that. I'll just point out a couple of them. One is bad faith. This requires that there be a breach of contract before a policyholder can sue a property insurer for settlement. Because what happens is a very high percentage of these lawsuits weren't because the people weren't happy. It wasn't because there was a problem. It really was literally because these attorneys have found a way that they could take advantage of a situation. So now there has to be a breach of contract. They've also done things, by the way, to force the insurance companies to also perform better, that I think is also worth noting. I'll just point a couple of them. Some of this might be insurance 101. I mean, too much information kind of thing, but just to be aware of the concept that they're also putting pressure on the insurance carriers. It reduces the time that an insurer has to make a determination of coverage from 90 days to 60 days.
Okay.
Right. So you have to do it quicker,
so
Mr. Insurance Company.
So just for clarification, this is not just for insurance company, the insurance industry to go through and pay off someone as in government and say, let's make it harder on attorneys, harder on people making claims. They're saying, no, you have some responsibilities as well.
Correct.
And I know it doesn't seem like 30 days is a big deal, but when you're the one waiting to see what determination, if it's going to be approved or rejected, you're sitting on pins and needles, and that 30 days could seem like 6 or 7 months.
Yes, it's exactly right. It also reduced the times for the insurance carrier to review and acknowledge a claim communication from 14 days to 7 days.
Okay.
It also requires a reduction in time for an insurer to begin an investigation from 14 days to 7 days. It also reduces the time for an insurer to conduct a physical examination from 45 days to 30 days.
Okay, stop right there. So now here's what we're hearing on my side. And just in the economy, we're hearing about labor shortages, people not wanting to work. And we know, and in our industry, in our lives, our businesses, when we start making strides to be better, that's putting a responsibility on the business owner, on the insurance carrier. So we're saying 60 from 90 to 60. We're going from 14 to 7, and now we're going from 45 to 30. Yeah. Is that going to be possible? Or are we seeing that's going to be a big difference or a huge strain on them? Are we not caring and just telling them that you've got to do your part? What are we seeing? What are you anticipating? Or do you have an opinion? Most of the
carriers gear up. Like I can tell you, I heard about this is a true story. It just happened with Hurricane Ian. That this, with technology today, this carrier, they got drone photos of the area on the West Coast, Neal, Fort Myers, Naples area, Port Charlotte area. And they got drone photos of roofs, for example, prior to the storm. And then they got drone photos of the roofs after the storm. And so they paid for this intelligence. And so what happened is that they had policyholders. So they set up villages in that area where people could come. People who had claims could come, answer their questions, and so there was a couple of days where they had a number of policyholders coming, asking them if this was legit. Because what happened, what the company did is, knowing that they already had damage based upon their intelligence, they sent them out, they sent checks into their accounts. And there's a lot of fraud going on. So people were thinking, is this legit? So the point is that there is intelligence that we can use. There is technology that we can use that's going to help, shorten the time for things to get processed. So this carrier, for example, they sent money to these people even before they filed a claim. And it wasn't the whole claim. It was just money so that they could start the process.
Okay.
And so I think we're going
Now
to find things like
on
that.
that, that's something, but I'm sure that's the type of thing that makes it attractive to the policy holders, right? Someone, especially in the time of crisis, when you start saying, not everyone's out to get me, right? But then also, just from a business standpoint, you have to be forward thinking to say, all right, here's what we can do. Now, could it cost us a little more on the front end with the drone footage? Yes, it could. But could it save time? Could we now be doing things that are going to be better for our policy holders, even though it might be more work for us? Can we cut down on some time? So I think that's always important. So thank you for sharing that. All right. So you were going down
It's a
your list.
great
Go ahead.
question to ask, by the way. You're asking the question that I think a lot of people would have on their mind. And so the other thing I want to say about that is that, you know, the main issue, the main peril that we have in Florida are hurricanes, right? That's the major thing that we know. Is not if, it's when, right?
Right.
And so the insurance companies gear up for that. You would think that that's the one that caused the problem. Like, so yes, having Hurricane Ian and Hurricane, is it Nicole? I don't remember the second one. Um, does affect insurance, but insurance carriers have geared up for that. This is not new to us. This is not new to them.
Okay.
And so what has really been the factor is the litigation. So they're geared up to be able to pay storms. They're aware that they're coming. They buy reinsurance to help to protect themselves against the major storms. And I think so. The other good news that I want to share with others is that once we get this litigation, once we can get a handle on it, we might even see insurance premiums go back down, Neal. That's the point that I think is coming. And this is what this major reform that's taken place. You know, when I talk to insurance carriers, they're always, this is obviously recent, and I don't think anyone I've spoken to said anything other than this, what I'm about to say. Well, we'll wait to see, because we don't know. You know, like I said, there's talk of filing appeals against what has already been put into law.
Right.
Who knows? The attorneys might find a way. They have credit to our legislators earlier this year in the regular session. They also had a second special session in July where they have made changes. And they also passed legislation last year to help the property insurance. And it's all of these things combined, we believe, are going to help the situation. But some of the things they did last year and earlier this year, the attorneys have already found ways around. So it wasn't the solution. More needed to happen. And this more is kind of what we're seeing now. But the point is, 2 points I'm making there. One is that we don't know what's going to happen now, right? Unfortunately, you have some people out there that are just, they're just going to try and find a way to make things happen for themselves.
Right.
But if things continue, if this law that's passed continues, then we will see a better insurance market for Florida. The insurance carriers are not here to just take money because they want to get more money in their pockets. Of course, they're for profit. And if they're not making a profit, if they're paying out more than what's coming in, then they're going to charge more. And I think policyholders needs to understand that. One of the things that a lot of these third parties, they sort of paint the picture that, hey, listen, you've been paying the insurance companies for years now. It's time for them to pay up. And yes, I understand that, and I get it. And in a lot of cases, that's true, right? I think I've only made one homeowner claim in my 30 plus years as a homeowner, right? And so in most cases, yes, that could be true. So there are some people that haven't filed one claim at all. And they're, unfortunately, also their insurance is going up, right? Because it's not an individual thing, it's what's happening.
Yes.
If the company's paying out more than what's coming in, they're going to have to charge more. So likewise, if they can get a handle on that, then the rates will come down. And the rates are regulated. So the insurance companies have to justify rate increases to the state, and it has to be approved. And so they and I've asked this question specifically to CEOs and the higher ups of insurance carriers, and they're all hesitant to say it because anything go up, it's always hard to come back down.
Right.
But if we can get this thing in order with the litigation, then they have all said to me, then yes, we'll see insurance premiums come down as well. So that's what we have to look forward to. Now, one thing that we haven't spoke about that I think is a part of the bill too, that I think people need to understand, is that the insurance carriers buy insurance, right? So it's called reinsurance. And so what happens is that it limits their risk. It doesn't put all of their surplus on risk for any one big storm that might happen, for example, right? It's a prudent way of doing business because you don't want to put your whole company in jeopardy from one potential. We could have a major storm that just costs billions of dollars that could put anybody out of business. Right. And so they buy insurance to help offset that. Well, the reinsurers, because of what's happening in Florida, have raised their rates significantly. So this is another part of what all of this has caused. Like I can tell you, I remember in 2020 hearing a specific company who's no longer around, by the way, that their reinsurance premium went up from $80 million to $160 million a year. That's for their reinsurance. So their reinsurance premium doubled. And so that's why some of the carriers are no longer in business. They just couldn't afford it. So with that being said, if it also can get it, when we get a handle on this, reinsurance can also come down, right? And that's negotiated on an annual basis. So that's another place that we're believing will get help. The other thing is they passed something in the bill where they formed a reinsurance pool, if you will, where carriers can now buy reinsurance through this pool. And so if an insurance company has a problem buying reinsurance, they have another option that might be available to them, supposedly at competitive or reasonably priced. So that's another thing that they did in the bill that should provide help. There are some things that little things like arbitration. It now allows for a company to give the homeowner an option of settling any disputes that they might have through binding arbitration. And for a reduced cost, they can get that. So that's something else that they can do. Another thing that it allows for, and you and I have spoken about this, and so we're going to see more of this now, is it allows for carriers to offer a payment schedule on roofs. And so if a consumer chooses that, supposedly for a lower premium, what happens is if they have damage to their roof, there's now going to be a depreciated scale payment. So that's an option that's available that allows them to do that. There are some things, and I do want to touch on. This is regarding citizens reform. So they have also done some things to citizens. What has happened? And Neal, pause for a moment. I know sometimes, like insurance, there's so much to discuss, but I don't, maybe we need to get back together another time. Should we continue? There's citizens reform to touch on, but let me pause and have you tell me.
So let's do the citizens reform, and then we're going to jump to closing remarks. So we're going to do citizens reform as succinct as you can, and then I'm also going to announce that we're going to have a podcast coming. So that's how we'll wrap up. Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir. So with the Citizens, Citizens has become the #1 carrier in Florida now.
Citizens hold on, Robin, right there. That was never the intention for Citizens, correct?
Correct. Citizens was designed to be a company of last resort. In other words, it started back in Hurricane Andrew in 1992. A lot of the carriers pulled out of the state because of the exposure that they realized they had here. And so in order to make something available to the consumer, they came up with what was called back then the Florida JUA, which is now called Citizens.
Okay.
And that was to be a company of last resort. But unfortunately, in South Florida, they're our main writer right now, Neal. That's the reality, based upon all the things that we've discussed. And so now there are over 1.1 million policyholders in Citizens. And so it's just not designed for that. So one of the things that they want to do is to depopulate Citizens.
Okay.
And they're also hoping that these changes will create a competitive marketplace for in the homeowner property insurance field as well, which will, eliminate the need to go to Citizens. Now that's going to take a little while, as I mentioned, unfortunately, but I believe based upon this we will have new carriers coming in. We'll have carriers that maybe don't even have the baggage of prior years, but because they see that there is a stable marketplace, that they could join into the market. So we're hoping that will speed things up. In the meantime, what they're doing, they're making some changes with Citizens. One is, if everybody in Citizens is available to other carriers to actually take them out of Citizens. They call it depopulate. That's always been in place. One of the things that this law changed is that if somebody gets an offer offer to assume your policy from Citizens, and the premium is less than 20% higher than your premium, you're obligated to take it. There's no option anymore. It used to be an option. So
Hold
it
on.
used to be
So you're telling us if I have my policy with Citizens right now, insurer A comes and they want to depopulate, and if my premium under insurer A would be no more than 20% higher than it is with Citizens, then we are obligated to take that.
Yes.
Now, I know we as human beings, we don't want to feel like we're told, but this is a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, the idea, come on, Rob, you're saying it's a good thing for me to pay higher premiums. But yes, it is, because the idea is that Citizens has too many policies. We need to get a competitive marketplace out there, man. And so, yeah, the thought there is that the Citizens is not charging actuarially sound premiums to begin with, right? That's another story, Neal, that we can talk about. But because there is a cap on how much Citizens can increase their premiums, it's a known fact that the premiums in Citizens right now are not actuarially sound. In other words, they're not sound based upon the potential loss. And so, it's in order to get a true competitive market, we need to, have more than just Citizens in the marketplace. And so, and by the way, there are advantages to other carriers coming in. Sometimes there are discounts that might be available with other carriers that might not be available with Citizens. There are minor coverages that can be available with these new carriers that might not be available with Citizens. Screen enclosures is a big one. For example, if somebody has a screen enclosure that's not covered by Citizens, and they might be able to get it covered by the carrier that comes and assumes their policy, for example. And so there are benefits to that, but just be aware of that. And you said succinct. Some other things that is noteworthy is that Citizens, they also now are going to make it mandatory for people to buy flood insurance if they're in a special flood hazard area. So if they're in a zone A, AH, AE, or A something, that's a special hazard, a special flood hazard area. They're going to be required to carry flood insurance. The second thing is, and the second part is going to be phased in, is eventually, no matter if you're in a special flood hazard area or just a regular flood hazard area. And by the way, for your listeners, Neal, I know you're aware of this, but we have this thing where we don't realize that all of Florida is in a flood zone. Oftentimes, if we're not in a special flood hazard area, we think we're not in a flood zone, right? And oftentimes people refer to that. people in our profession, you know, mortgage people, realtors. I mean, people refer that we're not in a flood zone, but everybody in Florida is in a flood zone, right?
Robin, that's why I was looking. I was looking down. I'm like, man, I think I'm still in Florida right now, but it's the special
Exactly.
part. But that
Exactly.
is important. And because of that, oftentimes we might give ill advice to our clients and say it's not needed, but then something like heavy rain comes, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden,
Or a storm. You know, a lot of the claims with Hurricane Ian were flood claims. And
ooh,
people need to understand that, you know, like just think about the obvious one is the surge, right? So the wind didn't damage that home. The wind didn't blow off that roof. The wind didn't damage the doors, the windows, the wall, nothing. The wind didn't damage that home. But what happened was a lot of water came with it. The water rose up and flooded that home. That's a flood insurance claim. And if you don't carry flood insurance, your homeowners does not cover you for that. And so people are realizing the need for flood insurance, and the insurance carriers also have problems with that, because then it says, you know, well, what do you mean you're not covering me? Well, sir, because it's not a wind damage, it's a flood damage.
yeah.
And your flood insurance company is the one that's supposed to cover that one. And so 30% of the flood claims that we process are in the preferred zones. So you're in a flood zone. You're just maybe not in a special hazard flood zone. You might be in a preferred zone, but because you're in a preferred zone doesn't mean you can't get flooded. So what they're doing now is they're making it a requirement that if you're having a citizens policy, no matter whether you're in a special flood hazard or a preferred zone, and you're in one or the other, folks, you are going to be required to buy flood insurance. No, that
And
second
that
one for
part
the
is going to be phased in, correct?
correct.
Okay.
So that won't happen. You know, they started in 2024, I think it is. So that's not going to be a factor right now. And they phase that part of it into, depending upon the value of the home, that by 2027 is when all homes, no matter what, will have to carry flood insurance if they're with Citizens.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Those are a couple of the things that are happening with Citizens that are noteworthy.
All right. So I have well, anytime we get together, there's always between the two of us, and I know the listeners as well, there's always so much that we can cover. But here's what I want to ask you in closing. Just going forward, let's say over the next year. I am a homeowner thinking about being a homeowner, whatever it is, but I have insurance that's going to be involved in transaction or in my life. What would you say? What's a handful of things that we should either be thinking about? What maybe should we know that we don't know already?
Wow, that's a great question. I think it is definitely good to review your policy. I would say definitely be in touch with your agent, review your policy, the options that you might have. I think it's good to consider, seeing what might be available. Has the market changed? If you're with Citizens and you get an offer of assumption, discuss that with your agent. See what your options might be. As your policy comes up for renewal, inquire about other options. Are there other policies available? One of the things that they did earlier this year is they've made a provision for supporting those who strengthen their homes to help mitigate against storm damage. There's actually credit that's available for consumers, for homeowners, to receive help with doing that. So maybe looking into putting on storm shutters or impact rated windows or doors if you don't have them, and being able to get help to do that. So that's something you can do, is to kind of strengthen your home. That helps that in terms of the discounts for your home. Maintaining your roof, doing what you can to maintain it. Yeah, I myself, I recently I had a client of mine need tell me about this company that they clean roofs without using like a pressure cleaning, so it doesn't damage the roofs, and that helps to prolong the life of your roof. So do things like that as homeowners. Do things to help mitigate, against damage in your home. Look at your washer and dryer connections, and if they haven't been changed for a while, get those changed. If your water heater is older and starting to rust a little bit, that's a potential for a loss. Get that addressed, get that replaced. So, regular maintenance of those things, your HVAC system, your electrical system, your plumbing, your roof, take the time to maintain those items. That will go a long way to help prevent damage and go a long way for you to help get insurance. Those are some
Good
of the things
stuff.
that
What
come to
else?
mind.
Okay, so here's what I always find. First, I want to say, Robin, thank you yet again. You never cease to impress. You never cease to deliver on the time that we have, your expertise, your knowledge, and your friendship.
Oh, thank you,
Can I
man.
do something right now, sir? Do I have your permission to do something?
Yes, sir. Certainly. You
All
can
right,
do
so
anything you want to do, man.
ladies and gentlemen, Robin and I have decided that we like talking to each other so much, we're going to do it much more frequently, regularly. And it's not just going to be about insurance and real estate and mortgage and all of that. Because we are kindred spirits, kindred souls, we're going to jump on and tackle an endeavor together that I know I'm excited about. I hope you are as well, Robin.
Yes, very much so, sir.
Okay, so we are going to be launching a podcast, the Big Life podcast. We're going to be launching very soon, and when I say soon, I'm talking about in weeks, ladies and gentlemen. So wherever you're watching this right now or listening to this, come back and we're going to be able to share some info on how you can subscribe to the Big Life podcast. It's going to be where we're going to really be walking through having conversations with each other. But then I know we have some amazing individuals that we have slated to be guests and who are going to be talking about the big life. And so, Robin, could you just give the people an intro, just an idea of what the big life is, what we're going to be doing, and what your idea of the big life is, sir?
Man, I am so excited, Neil. And folks, I can't tell you how I'm excited, how much am I excited to be doing this with Neal. Yeah, Neal and I actually met a few years ago at a networking event. And perhaps, Neal, we should talk a little bit more about that on the podcast. But what I want to let you know, folks, is that we just kind of realized right away that we were kindred. And one of the areas that we're kindred is that we are serious investors in our personal development and
Yes,
growth.
sir.
And so that's one of the major things that we're going to talk about, folks. And I couldn't tell you a person that I'd be more excited to do this with than Neal. And Neal not only is, that person who invests in that, but as a result, he is living it. And so I am excited to share with you, with Neal and I, to share with you how to increase your performance, how to
Yes,
live
sir.
into your potential. The big life, as both of us have looked at performance, and we've looked at those that have succeeded, those who have achieved, those who have overachieved. There are some things that we have noted, and so the big life is an acronym for that. And one is they have a belief in themselves, and the belief is sort of a perspective, an attitude, if you will, about their capabilities, about who they are, discovering their purpose, and what they're good at. And there's so much that goes into that, even just the self-image, how we think.
Yeah.
There is so much under that heading of belief, but that's the B and the big, and the I is for invest in yourself. I think of Michael Jordan, and Neal, you and I know that as a high school basketball player, he was dropped from the high school basketball team but yet Michael Jordan has gone on to become arguably one of the greatest basketball players in basketball history, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference? Did Michael Jordan have the potential as a high schooler? Yes, he did. But one of the things that he did is he invested in himself. He determined, first of all, that that was not going to happen again. And then second of all, he was out there learning, playing, practicing, growing, honing his skill. And that's the idea of investing in yourself. And there's some specific areas that Neal and I are going to talk about that we believe are just basic to everybody, no matter what field you're in, no matter what industry you're in. You need to get better at communication. You need to get better at leadership. You need to get better at equipping others. You need to get better at attitude and having the right attitude and having the right perspective. Your thinking is probably the most important thing in terms of reaching your potential. So attitude, and then also relationships. You know, the statistics, Harvard studies show that the number one factor in somebody moving up in their career and in their workplace is how to get along with people and working with people. And then Neal, you and I are people of faith, and so we'll also interject some of that in there. We don't want to, you don't have to be a person of faith to enjoy and learn and gain from our podcast, but because we are people of faith, like I'll just tell you, for example, I personally believe that the only way to reach your full potential, it includes God and as our maker, you know, who made us. And so we might refer to that. It won't be a turnoff to you if that's not your faith. It's more of just, we might share a little bit from our perspective also as an area to focus on and develop. That just doesn't happen automatically either. That needs for us to be intentional. And then the life side of big is living a life of love. So there's some pillars, if you will, that we will be looking at, and that's love. You know, that's valuing others and adding value to others, and putting others above yourself. The I in life is for intentional. The only way to live into our potential is to be intentional about our beliefs, our values, and what it is that's important to us. Things don't just happen. In other words, we have to be intentional about it. Neal, you were just talking to me earlier that your wife and yourself were walking, right? You're doing that as a part of helping to get into shape. Well, if you're not intentional about that, because I think you said you did it early morning, for example.
Yes, sir.
If you're not intentional about that, that's just not going to happen, right? So we have to be intentional. The F in life is for a formula of success. The formula for success is where it includes failure, recognizing that there is a formula for success. We'll talk about that. And then the E is, it's evidenced by the lives that you touch. So living the big life is evidenced by the lives you touch. So this is just an acronym that we have, that we use, and that we will hopefully add value to you. That's really what it's all about, to help you to grow into your potential. And I couldn't have a better person to do this with. Nick, I'm Neal. Sorry, did I just say Nick? Neal, I have learned so much from you, sir. And I say that with all sincerity, that your listeners, our listeners, are in for a treat. I know I'm going to gain. I know I've gained, and I will continue to gain from what you have to share, and as well as the guests that we have on our show.
Absolutely. So we've got some work to do, but I am excited about what's ahead. So, Mr. Robin Lewis, here's what I want to tell you and everyone who's watching or listening to us. First, thank you for your time. Thank you for your commitment to the industry, and thank you for your commitment to just being a pillar in the industry, but then also a pillar of light for me and just in the lives of everyone who meets you. I want to remind everyone that we love you. God loves you. There's nothing you can do about it. Want to remind you that we're right there with you. And until the next time we see you or you see us, don't be average, be world renowned. Love y'all. Bye, everyone.